Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to have one in-depth discussion about dependency injection, inversion of control, IOC container of Spring IOC framework, and I will explain you all the nitty-gritties about these topic in details along with coding. So let us first simplify our understanding regarding dependency injection and IOC container with one real life example first. So let's imagine that you want to have noodles, which you can have in two ways possible. First, you yourself has to prepare it and then you can have it. In that case, you have to resolve all the dependencies for preparing noodle, like noodle, oil, sauces, veggies, eggs, whatever you want to put in your noodles. So everything you have to resolve it and then prepare it and then you can have it. Number two, you can ask one expert to prepare the noodle and you just sit back and enjoy it. Okay, so obviously number two, the second way is much more preferable in our case, right? Now let us understand a similar scenario in case of coding. Suppose you have two classes, restaurant class and noodles class, and you have a method prepare food in the restaurant class and another method prepare noodles inside your noodles class. Now suppose you want to access prepare noodles method of noodles class inside restaurant class. How can you do that? One way is you have to create an object of noodles class inside restaurant class so that you can access the method of noodles class this way. N dot prepare noodles. But this particular way will be arising some issues whenever you are working in a big project which has multiple files. How? Number one, whenever you are trying to replace your noodles class with a better version of noodle class, and suppose you have changed the name also as better noodles or something. So in that case, whichever classes has dependency on this noodle class, you have to change everywhere. Number one. So number two is, suppose you have changed or you have rather added one parameterized constructor. Okay. So then in that case, each and every class wherever you have a dependency on noodle class, you have to change all over. Right? You have to change everywhere possible, which is also will be very cumbersome. Now, third point is you will never ever be able to test your restaurant class without including noodles class. This won't be possible. So there are quite a few problems when you are working in a big project with multiple files with this approach. If you want to access one particular Java files or class method in from or inside another class. Now let us imagine the way somebody else was preparing the noodles for us and we were just enjoying it. Is there any other way in case of coding also that someone else will be creating and providing the object of, in our case here, the noodles class object, and then we can only use it to access the method or attribute of noodles class or whichever class we have the dependency on. In this scenario only, Spring IOC framework comes into picture. So here IOC container means inversion of control container actually creates those objects which you have the dependency on. Okay, that will create the objects and provide it to you. So why IOC, inversion of control? Means reversal of control, which means that till now either us or some main program was creating the object for noodles class like this using the new operator. But now we are providing the control of creating those objects and providing them to a framework, to a container which is called IOC container, and that is why inversion of control. So we are doing the reverse of control and providing the access of controlling all the beans or objects to one container which is IOC container. Okay, so now the point is that there are two ways that we can use or IOC container works basically. One is in Spring we can do it either using XML way or using Java way. Now before we jump into the way that we can use IOC container, first we need to know the two different type of IOC container. One is bean factory, another one is application context. Now depending on your requirement you can use them, but specifically or mostly we use application context because application context does the same thing which bean factory does, but with a bit extra more thing, because application context actually internally extends bean factory. Now let us understand the different ways of using or implementing IOC container in our code. So first of all, the very old version where we used to use XML, where we were actually declaring the beans. Here one thing that I need to mention, that beans are nothing but the object of classes only. It's just the Spring way of calling one object. That's it. Okay. So one way is XML way, another way is Java configuration way, which we are using nowadays, where all the annotations like @component, @configuration, @service, @controller, repository, @component scan, everything is coming into picture. Now let us understand those two ways in coding. First is XML way. See, here we have the bean created for restaurant class. We have one restaurant class for which we have created one bean called restaurant bean. Along with that, we have another class called food class, for which also we have created one bean called food bean, right? So similar way, nowadays for Java configuration, this XML file is not at all required. Instead of that, what you can do is you can have one file which will be annotated with @configuration, so that your Spring framework or IOC container will know that from where the execution should start with. And whenever you are putting this @component scan on top of a class along with this configuration, so it will know that all the classes under this package, if any of the classes are annotated with @component, @services, @controller, or any sort of like @repository, so all those classes bean or object has to be created at the time of loading itself. Okay, I will come to the rest part of the code a bit later, but before that, if you see here in XML file or this file in the Java configuration, there is nowhere that we have used any new operator or trying to create the bean of restaurant class. We are just provided the name of the restaurant class and it is creating the bean or object of the class. So how this IOC container is doing it behind the scenes, how it is happening it. So here reflection API is coming into picture. So reflection is such an API which you can use to check and modify the behavior of like methods, classes or interfaces at runtime. Okay, and reflection is also one of those ways using which we can create the object of a class. So using that way only, Spring also create the object of the class name that we are providing to create the object to Spring Framework. For your better understanding, let's imagine that you have this food class which you need to create one object, but you yourself don't want to create the object of food class, so you will be telling Spring Framework either through XML configuration like this, where you will be declaring bean ID as food bean and you will be giving the whole path of the food class here, or you will be giving one annotation on top of food class in case of Java configuration, and you will be providing this component scan so that it will create all those @component annotated classes objects. So how Spring does it? Spring does it using reflection, as I have already mentioned, but something similar to this code. First, class.forName. So this they will be getting either through this XML configuration this way, or they will be getting in the Java configuration way using the annotation way. So once they got the name of the class, then they will be creating the constructor using this get constructor, okay, and then they will be creating the instance of the class, and all these methods for name, get constructor, new instance belong to this. First of all, this for name belong to this class. Get constructor also belong to this class, and it returns a constructor type of object. Okay, and you will be getting every method related to reflection API in java.lang.reflect. So if you want to explore it, you can explore it and just open your STS and open Java lang reflect, or like this Ctrl+Shift+T, just type class. You will be getting all the methods here inside the jars. See, for name, if you want to search for this get constructor, all these methods are here itself. See, even we have the parameter is part of constructor also. So one of our problem is resolved, that Spring IOC container will create and provide you the object that you need, and that's all. But what about the dependency? That particular code that I've showed you, right? That restaurant class want to access the method of noodles class, and that is why we were creating the object of noodles class inside restaurant class. But now this part is not needed anymore. So we don't have to create the object of noodles class anymore. So then, because IOC container has created the object of noodles class for you, so that problem is gone. But now, how will you use that object inside your restaurant class? How can you inject that particular object inside your restaurant class? That is where dependency injection is coming into picture. So first of all, to bind these two, one interface you have to use here. So here we have taken this iNoodles interface. How it will work? Our noodles class will be implementing this iNoodle interface, and we will be accessing noodles classes object using the reference of this iNoodles interface. And using that reference of iNoodles interface, we will be accessing the methods of noodles class as well. So basically, suppose you have a bean created for noodles class in one hand, and you have a reference name of an interface which noodles class implement. So you will be putting this bean, this noodle classes bean in your iNoodles interfaces reference, and you will be using this reference name to access any method or attribute of noodles class inside any classes. In our case, it is the restaurant class. And we can do this in two ways possible. One is setter method way, another is constructor way. Okay, So let us understand first the setter way. Suppose you have this restaurant class, so inside which you will be just mentioning the reference name of that interface, and you will be having one setter method. You can give any name to this method. This is just for my understanding or your better understanding. I have kept it as set noodles, and then using this dot in, this is the operator. This dot in refers to this in reference variable, and this in is nothing but this one which we were passing. So the passed one is actually the bean of noodles class, which is getting passed using the reference of iNoodles interface. And this is how we are setting the noodles class object here inside restaurant class, and using this in only we are accessing the prepare noodles method of noodles class. So in constructor way also we can do this. How? We will be just using the restaurant classes constructor, or whichever class, inside whichever class you are creating that dependent classes object. So you will be using that classes in constructor. Just pass that particular classes interfaces reference and do the similar thing that you have done inside the setter method. Okay, fine. So let us go to the code now and understand this thing more. So I will be showing you two ways. One is using XML configuration, and here I will be showing you two ways of doing the dependency injection that I have just explained it. One is constructor way, another one is setter method way. Okay, and another one I will be showing you the similar part of code using a Java configuration way. So let us first understand the XML way. We have food class which will be implementing the noodles interface. We have one method prepare noodles which we have given a proper definition inside food class, and now we want to access this prepare noodles method from restaurant class. So we can do that in two ways. First, the constructor way. You can create the restaurant class constructor and pass the reference variable of noodles interface which has been implemented by food class. So what will happen? In this way, you are actually passing the bean of food class in or through this reference variable of noodles interface, and we are setting it here, using which we can access the method of food class prepare noodles. Okay, and we can do the similar thing using setter method way as well. It's just that instead of a constructor, you need to create one setter method and pass the reference variable of that interface. Rest of the part is same. Okay, now let us run it using constructor way first. See, it has printed welcome to our new restaurant, which was written inside prepare noodles method, right? So what has been written here then? So first of all, the first line, and inside this main method we have written application context equals to new class path XML application context. So this application context is nothing but that IOC container that is provided by Spring Framework. I have already told you, right? So here we are using application context. This class path XML application context, this is actually one implementation of this application context interface only, which this class path XML application context, what it will does is it will first find this XML file that you have given. It will go to that path, find this XML file, load it, and then read it line by line. And then IOC container, means this application context, will create the bean or object of those classes that you will be mentioning in this XML file. So two classes that we have mentioned, bean ID restaurant bean, and this is restaurant class, this is food class. Why we have given this ID? So for this whole Spring framework, this restaurant class's bean or object will be known by this name, similar to food class as well. Okay, and as we are doing this in constructor way, so in case of XML configuration, we have to provide this constructor argument ref equals to food bean. Why food bean? Because we are passing food classes object inside restaurant class. Sorry. See, this bean is completed here. So we are actually passing this constructor arg or argument food bean for restaurant class, and that is how when we are writing this restaurant constructor and we are passing this noodles I noodles, and that is how this bean, this food bean is setting into this I noodles, and that's how we can use that food classes bean or object using this I noodles reference variable, and we can access the method of food class. I hope that is clear to you now. So what if that I want to run in setter method way? Okay, before that, the last two lines. Okay, first, so this line does the finding, loading and reading the XML file, and they have created it. Now using this get bean, we are actually getting the bean or object name as restaurant bean. As I have already mentioned, in the XML file, that Spring framework will be knowing this restaurant classes bean as by this name. So that is why whenever we are giving this name, so Spring framework should return the object of restaurant class, using which we are actually calling the method of restaurant class greet customer, which is this one, inside which we are calling the food classes method, where we have the system.out.println, and this is the whole flow works. So if the similar thing we want to do it in setter method way, there is one small difference. First is you have to write the setter method, and the second part is, in case of XML file, the way you have given this passing this constructor argument. So similarly, in case of setter method, we have to pass this property name. See, what is the property name here inside of restaurant class? I noodles, right? That's what we are passing in this setter method. So against this I noodles, we will be passing the food classes object food bean. So that is why in place of reference we are giving the food bean, and that is how it is getting set in this set I noodles method, and this whole project will be working similar to how it was working in case of constructor way. Now let us run it. See, same thing. Welcome to our new restaurant. So it is working absolutely fine in both of the way in case of XML configuration. So now we will be doing the same thing but in Java configuration way. So for a better understanding, I'll be going file by file so that I can show you the difference from XML to Java configuration. So as I have shown you already this file, food implements noodle in XML configuration way. So the same file in Java configuration, we have just changed one thing, or rather this one is updated, like we will be annotated this food class with @component. Okay. So whenever we are saying @component means we are telling Spring framework to create the object of this food class. Okay. Okay, now for the next class, interface, the interface will be similar. There is no change. Now coming to restaurant class. This was for the XML configuration. But in case of Java configuration, see the similar way we have annotated this class as @component so that Spring Framework will create the object of this class, and we have annotated inoodles with @AutoWire. Okay, with @AutoWire, so that the object of food class which will be created, it will be AutoWire, or it will be accessible inside restaurant class using the reference variable of noodles interface, and that is how we are accessing the method prepare noodles of food class inside restaurant class. Now I have one question. You let me know in the comment section below that in XML configuration we were doing either constructor way or setter method way, the dependency injection. So what is the way that Spring Framework internally doing when we are writing this @AutoWire? How or which way dependency injection Spring Framework uses when we are writing this annotation? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay, now let us go to the next class. And yes, one more thing is, there is no need of this Spring XML file, so we can delete this file in this case. Okay, we don't need that file in case of Java configuration. So how that configuration we are putting using Java file? This was the XML configuration. Okay, now this class we are using in Java configuration, which you can say is a combination of that XML file and this test spring project.java. So in XML file what we were doing is we were defining all those classes with one particular bean name for which we need the objects or bean to be created. So here when we are writing this @component scan, this is nothing but this will actually scanning all the components, or rather all those classes which are annotated with @component under this package. As we haven't defined any base packages here, that is why it will be taking the base package inside which this class is there. Okay, so it will be scanning all those classes. As if you see this food class, this noodle class, everything we are having under the same umbrella. So that is why it will be creating the object of all those classes and provide it to you. And so here using this class annotation config application context, which actually implements this application context, we will be registering, first scanning whichever are there in our class path according to the @component scan inside this package. It will be scanning all those @component or @service or @controller annotated classes, and it will be registering all those created beans. Okay, so then all those beans will be available through this context, and that's why again the similar way we are getting the restaurant classes object using this getBean method, and we are calling this grid customer method of restaurant class. Then this one, let me remove all those XML configuration classes. Yeah, so then calling this method greet customer will be calling the method of food class prepare noodles using this reference variable of noodles interface. So let us run this. See, so using Java configuration also we got the similar output.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching.
If you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. It means a lot to me. I will catch up with you guys in my next video. Till then, keep learning with Proy.